the copyright lapsed, and so TVs were able to pick it up. And it started showing on TV all the time. Every single day you could watch it on TV. And that is how it became popular, was because it was showing on TV and people began to watch it and began to see it and began to see value in it and began to appreciate what it was going on. And so, there's so much we can learn from God in this part of this movie. And that's what we're doing. We're taking movies, Christmas movies, and seeing what we can learn about God. Last week we did the Grinch, and we talked about how God's not a Grinch, and he doesn't want us to be a Grinch, and we gave practical ways for you to not be a Grinch during the holiday seasons or any other season of your life. And so, if you didn't see that, you didn't listen to it, you can go listen to that. It's on YouTube, you can find it. But today we're going to kind of dive into the middle of It's a Wonderful Life, which is kind of hard. And you find George Bailey, who if you've never seen it, I don't want to ruin it for you, but he's got a good life, but he never gets to do his dream. And then he gets thrown into stress, and he handles stress a little bit wild, and because he's going to be drastic things are going to happen to him, and then so we come to this point where he wishes he wasn't born, and Clarence, the angel, comes and touches his life, and man, here's what I want you to know about God in this movie. As you can tell, it's kind of not theologically correct, and all that. We know that. But here in King David said in Psalm 34:18, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit." The Lord is close to those who are brokenhearted. That's the gist of what we learn from this Christmas movie. And basically, we begin to see God work in a movie, and it is God, and it's probably not the way God would work now, but we're going to look at a practical way that God did work in the Bible. Because did you know that in the Bible, there are multiple people who deal with stress and depression and hard times and are brokenhearted? One of them is King David. He was a man after God's own heart, and he struggled with just stress and depressed, and he knew that God was close to the brokenhearted. And if you read Psalms, you begin to hear him cry out, "Oh Lord, why have you not heard me? Why have you not been with me?" And he's got anguish and hurt and pain. And all throughout the Bible, you see people who are struggling. Jeremiah wrestled with great loneliness and feeling of defeat and insecurity. Moses got angry and felt alone. Jonah was angry and wanted to run away. Elijah is who we're going to study today. He got discouraged and weary and afraid and was in the middle of depression. And Jesus himself felt anguish right before he went to the cross. There's full of messages, and there's full of people in the Bible who go through stress, anguish, depression, and I want you to know that today God is close to the brokenhearted. He is here because he loves you. And maybe you don't deal with depression, but a lot of us, did you know that? And maybe you do. And depression can be onset by rain, sleet, snow, sun. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything that hits us, and it kind of takes over life. It kind of puts us in a place where we struggle. And a lot of times when you have depression, you feel like you're alone. But here's what I want you to know. Over 300 million people in the world are diagnosed as depressed, and that's from the World Health Organization. And they also say that 6.7% of Americans have dealt with depression attacks over the last year, and there are going to be another different set of 6.7 that are going to deal with that over the course of a year. And there's tons of people dealing with it. And oftentimes we don't address it as Christians, and we don't address it as a church, and you feel alone. And what I want you to know is that you're not. You're not. And we're going to be in 1 Kings 19. If you have a Bible, open it up, and we'll just not throw it up here. We'll just leave whatever's up there. But Elijah is one of my favorite stories. He is a prophet. This was the time of Baal, and he was going head to head with hundreds, over 100 prophets for Baal, and he was by himself. And he comes to the place where he confronts them because God had called him to confront Baal. And so he goes to all these prophets and said, okay, we're going to make an altar, and you're going to make it to Baal, and you're going to set it up, and when it catches fire, that's going to prove that Baal is there. And then, after a while, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to sacrifice and set up an altar for God. And this is 1 Kings 18-ish. And what happens is, for a long, long time, the Baal prophets do this dance and this sing and this song and this action, and nothing ever happens. Elijah makes fun of them and is talking trash to them. And then it's his time, and he says, okay, go ahead and put lots of water on it, douse it with water, and then he says, God, come down. And God comes down with thunder and just blows that thing up. And then we have this moment where Baal's prophets come to their end. They're no longer with us. And Elijah stands victorious, and he is no longer in opposition to all these prophets, and he is in victory. And he's at the place where he says, God is all I need, and God is all I want. And he's done this incredible thing, and he's noticed God did great things. And then the next day happens. Queen Jezebel finds out that all her prophets for Baal were killed, and she puts a notice and says, Elijah, you're going to die before today's over. And there's a moment where Elijah turns, hears the word, and runs. And it's in this. Elijah was afraid. It's 1 Kings 19:3. Elijah was afraid and ran for his life. When he came to Beersheba in Judah, he left his servants there, while he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness. He came to a broom bush, sat down under it, and prayed that he might die. I have had enough, Lord. Take my life. I'm no better than my ancestors. Then he laid down under the brush and fell asleep. This is 24 hours after a man stands victorious and admits, God is all I need, all I want. And then he's on a day, in the next day, he is running for his life, afraid, and he is alone, and he's left his servants to do what they will, and he runs a day's journey, and he hits the wilderness. He lays under a tree, and he falls asleep. We have a man. It's not much different than George Bailey, who has to have $8,000 so that his business can keep going, and he gets angry and frustrated. And Elijah sits under a tree, and George Bailey says the same thing. I've had enough. I've had enough. And Elijah gets to the place where he says, I have had enough, Lord. Have you ever gotten to the place where you just cried out, I've had enough? I've had enough. Jesus, I'm done. I'm finished. I can't take this anymore. I can't take this job. I can't take this stress. I can't take this life. I'm done. I've had it. I've had enough. You ever got there? That's where Elijah is. That's where he is. That's where he was. And look what happened. Keep reading in 5. All at once an angel touched him and said, get up and eat. He looked around, and there by his head was some bread baked over hot coals and a jar of water. He ate and drank and then laid down again. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you. So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he traveled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And how did he go from victory to depression? He's in the middle of depression. And he lays down and he just says, I have had enough. He cries out, and all he wants to do is be over and sleep and just be done. So he falls asleep. He's alone. And notice what he says. He says, I'm not even worthy of my ancestors. So he begins to compare himself to people around him. He's all alone. He begins to compare himself. And then he begins to sleep. And God touches him and says, wake up. And he eats. He eats, and then he goes back to sleep. And God touches him again, and he's got this cycle where we eat, sleep, and repeat, and we do it over and over again. That's probably how I handle depression and stress for myself, is I just put it on a cycle. And I eat, I sleep, and I repeat. And that's where Elijah is. And God comes to him and says, get up and eat. You're not strong enough for the journey that I have for you. Eat. Be strengthened by that food. And he becomes strengthened by God's food. And he moves and he works and he goes to a cave. But notice what God does. In the middle of his depression, God comes to him. And God touches him and says, get up and eat. He doesn't stand over the top of the bed and say, just get over it. Move on. What are you doing? You're wasting your time. Don't you remember what happened yesterday? You're good. I am great. I am mighty. I am king. I am God. And you are following me. What happened? He just says, no. Hey, wake up and eat. Wake up and eat. So Elijah does. And he wakes up and eats. And he falls back asleep. At that point, what are you going to do? That was the other speaker in the kids' room. That really weirded me out. I thought it was a popcorn machine breaking. I was like, oh no, it's going to blow up and rocket out of here. So, man, and so he falls asleep. And I think about this. I think about my mom, when she would handle this, and she's going to watch this. My mom would be irate if I did this. She was all about get over it, and I am too. I tell my kids that a lot. Susan gets mad at me. Just get over it. Just move on. What are you doing? That's not how God handled it. God touches him and said, hey, get up and eat. For you're not strong enough to make this journey yet. Get up and eat. And the thing about it is, about God, that you need to know and I need to know, is he says, you're not ready for this journey that I have for you. In the middle of our depression, we think that we're all alone and that we're unworthy. And that we have no purpose and we have no plan and we have nothing. But God comes to us and says, you know what? In the middle of your depression, in the middle of your pain, I have a plan for you. I have a purpose for you. And I want to use you. And so, man, and that's exactly what happens with George Bailey. He goes and he at the end of the movie, he's running through town and screaming and Merry Christmas and, to buildings and signs and people and he touches lives and he has a big purpose and a big moment where God just does, things and continues to do things. Here's the good news in this. God can handle your depression. God can handle your stress. And maybe you're here and you're going, and I don't have any depression. I don't have any stress. I got other stuff. God can handle your stuff too. No matter where you're at in life, no matter where you're at in sin, he can handle your habitual sin. He can handle your hidden sin. He can handle your pain. He can handle your hurts. That's what God is. That's the good news about God, is that he comes to us and touches us where we are and says, I need you. Here you are. Here's what you... And what he does is he just simply provides and meets their need. And he does the same for you. That's why David was able to say, the Lord is close to the brokenhearted, because he had been brokenhearted and had God touch his life and make a difference in it. We'll read to the end. In verse 9. And the word of the Lord came to him. What are you doing here, Elijah? He replied, I have been very zealous for the Lord God Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with a sword. I'm the only one left. And now they're trying to kill me too. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord. For the Lord is about to pass by. That's an awesome moment. He's in a low spot, and God says, look, I'm going to come show you myself. I'm going to come reveal myself to you. Not a lot of people get to see God, but Elijah's about to see God. So the Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence, for I am about to pass by. And then a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind, there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake, came a fire, but the Lord was not in a fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his head, and he went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. God came as a gentle whisper. God is moving in your depression or your sin, or whatever it is you're dealing with. Here's the thing, it might not be the way that you want him to do, but he's moving and he's working. He's moving and he's working. And he simply is asking, what are you doing here? Let me move you. I have a plan. I have a purpose. Why are you moving? Why are you sitting? It was a gentle whisper that got Elijah to stand up out of his moment and out of his laziness, out of his depression, and move out to the cave to see God. And God says, why are you here? What are you doing? He actually, if we read on, he asked, as he's out there, he asked Elijah again, what are you doing here? And Elijah gives him the same answer. But he says, well, go here, and I have more, because he said, I'm the only one left. And he says, go, there are more people than you. You have a plan, I have a plan and a purpose for you. I'm going to use you. Now that you're strengthened, let's use you. And let's move you. So God meets him in depression, in the moment. And he does wonderful things in his life. It doesn't wrap it up into a tiny pretty bow at that moment. But he comes and he says, I want to be with you. I want to walk with you. Because see, God is close to the brokenhearted. He wants to be in your life. He wants to be involved in your life. He wants to help you. He wants you to move. And he loves you too much to leave you there. And that's what we can learn about God from this movie, really. Yeah, is it silly to look at movies and learn about God? Maybe. But it's also fun to look at what God is even. Because God is in the world and he is moving and working. And he is right there where you at. He meets you and he says, I love you too much to leave you right here. So wherever it is you're dealing with, wherever it is you're working, God loves you too much to leave you there. So if you're in the middle of depression, I would love to talk to you. I don't have all the answers. But I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to give you an ear. I'd love to see God touch your life and move you from where you are. God is an amazing God who just absolutely loves us. My prayer this season is that you would lean to him, let him touch you. Because it's hard, this season is hard, and there's going to be times where we get depressed, and this is a hard season of life for some people. And that's okay. Let God touch you where you're at.